We may have heard recently that people across this country have experienced storms, floods, snow warnings, avalanche warnings, heavy rain, harsh temperatures, etc., etc. We're going to focus today on the fact that at least 20 deaths have been attributed to a 3-week barrage of storms in California that are classified as atmospheric rivers. The state of California has received 4 to 6 times its typical average rainfall for this time of year. And many places, such as the Sacramento and Santa Cruz counties, have met their annual average rainfall already, with many months to go. A state of emergency was declared this week after mudslides, sinkholes, downed trees continued to put residents in danger. 16 counties were under flood warnings, and in some areas, highways were closed due to avalanche warnings and heavy snow. The storms also knocked out power for thousands of homes. On top of that, in fact, maybe because of that, people are tired. The American Red Cross stated that they've been helping thousands of people who are just exhausted by the effects of the storms. And we might be exhausted too. Exhausted by hearing again and again about storms, about longer storm seasons, more rain, less rain, warmer, colder, floods, power outages. Hearing about the effects of climate change is not new to us. Certainly not here at Bethel, where we've spoken about it from the Bima and in smaller conversations, but for decades, experts have been sounding alarms, warning us of the potentially devastating effects of the climate crisis. Like waters rushing over the same rock time and time again, eroding it, we grow tired hearing again and again about another storm, another early winter or late rain season, more people without power in their homes, more harsh weather warnings. As we read this morning, the Egyptians under Pharaoh felt the same way. Our Parsha Va'era recounted the plagues that God brought upon Egypt. With the first one, Moshe strikes the waters of the Nile and the water turns to blood. Moshe says the fish in the Nile will die, the Nile will stink, so that the Egyptians will find it impossible to drink the water of the Nile. V'hadaga asher bayaor tamut uva'ash hayaor. V'nil'u Mitzrayim lishtot mayim min hayaor. Our Chumash translates Nil'u Mitzrayim as the Egyptians will find it impossible to drink the water. But like any good Jewish text, there's disagreement as to how to translate this phrase. The 11th century Spanish rabbi Ibn Ezra says, similar to our Chumash, that V'nil'u is from the nifal binyan, or grammatical construct, and implies that the Egyptians were not able to drink the water. Meanwhile, Rashi writes that V'nil'u has to do with wearying or becoming tired. They shall weary themselves, he writes, in seeking a cure for the waters so that they may be fit to drink. V'nil'u Mitzrayim, Rashi writes, levakesh refuah lemei hayaor, sheyihu re'uyin lishtot. I got curious, so I looked at a few dictionaries online, including the BDB, or Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew English Lexicon, if you're not into the whole brevity thing. And when we look at the word nil'u, it comes up under the root lamed aleph hey, just as Ibn Ezra has it. And all these dictionaries provide a variety of translations, such as to be weary, to be impatient, be grieved, be offended, or to despair. So what can we make of this wide variety of understandings of this word? What does it mean that when the plagues hit the Egyptians, nil'u? We can learn from all the different understandings or ideas of what this phrase means that each person, each family, each community reacted differently. Depending on their life situation, we can imagine that seeing they had no water to drink, some people thought, oh, this again, how inconvenient. I have to go to Target and get bottles of water, whatever their Target equivalent was. Perhaps others got angry at their leadership or at Moshe and the Israelites, while still others may have sat and cried, unable to figure out what to do next. The fact that there are so many possible meanings of this phrase tells us not that one translation is right and the others are wrong, but is a nod to the truth that there are so many factors that go into how we each experience the same event, our resources, our socioeconomic situation, who we are, where we are. And this is a reality of the climate crisis. Dayenu, a Jewish call to climate action, states in its mission that the climate crisis exacerbates existing inequities, even as its impacts spread far and wide to every corner of the world. Each of our homes, each of our cities will continue to experience it differently. Some will notice that winter arrives earlier, others will feel storms harsher or longer. Many will lose access to clean water. Perhaps the hardest part is it's not clear what will be the new normal. Can Californians expect a storm season like this every year? What does it mean for us here, our lakes, our infamous winters? Rabbi Joshua Shosky writes that the plague of fiery hail that we read about today in the 7th Aliyah is an oxymoron and an impossibility in and of itself. Fire within rain. It was something so unheard of, so strange that it served as a light bulb of sorts for the Egyptians. They had forgotten who they were as a nation, founded as a land of beauty and hope and bounty along the Nile, welcoming to strangers and suffering peoples in need during times of trouble and famine. There's nothing good about these storms, about the destruction our neighbors and siblings are experiencing across the country. But if we too can see it as a light bulb of sorts, a reminder or a push into the conversation of the climate crisis and how we can confront it, then at least it may not be for nothing. Rabbi Warshawski ends his piece by asking, this Shabbat, what will serve as a flashpoint for you? What needs changing in your routine or in our collective psyche? We just said the blessing to welcome the month of Shevat, which means that in a couple weeks, we will celebrate Tu B'Shvat, the birthday or the holiday of the trees. And so keeping this in mind, keeping our celebration in mind of this earth, and as we read the plagues this week and next, let us be called to action by the weather forecasts and the warnings. Let us pay particular attention to what the earth is telling us. May we each take up the cause, harnessing our Lamed Aleph Hey, our weariness, our anger, our despair, in response to the climate crisis, to the inequities and dangers it brings. May we remember what it says in Psalm 115, the heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth God gave to humans. And as Dayenu calls on us, may we continue to work to bridge the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with Musaf, page 155.